DC Films' long-standing leadership problem. If nothing else, Hamada has to be better than Warner's previous choice of a studio head, which tended to default to nobody. Early on, Zack Snyder was assumed to be the default visionary of the DCEU, but it's not clear why that choice was made or if there was ever a real, structured plan. Snyder was chosen by Christopher Nolan, fresh off his triumphant The Dark Knight trilogy, to direct Man of Steel, based on a pitch from Nolan's Batman collaborator David Goyer. That was a perfectly reasonable choice, even if Snyder's film ended up being more controversial than Warner Brothers was hoping. But Snyder is not really a management producer, the type of person who's going to manage schedules and budgets and the day-to-day work of a sprawling brand. He's a director, and a polarizing one at that. He was simply never the right choice to be the Kevin Feige of the DC universe. Similarly, Jon Berg's role never seemed to be very clearly defined, and it was never made plain he was any sort of leader in a creative or management sense. His departure in late 2017 to head up a new production company was largely met with a shrug. The odd man out here is, of course, Jeff Johns. The fan-favorite comic book scribe became DC's co-president with Berg in the wake of Batman v Superman's disappointing reception. By that point, Wonder Woman was already well into production, although John still had a hand in shaping that film's tone and narrative, alongside director Patty Jenkins. But the wheels were also already turning on the doomed Justice League, and so holding Johns accountable for that film's failure seems deeply unfair. He's no longer in charge, but never really had a film to see from start to finish. Johns isn't going anywhere though, as he remains president and chief content officer of DC Entertainment. He'll work alongside Hamada to shape the future film slate, though it seems likely that will be in a reduced or altered role. Johns, for his part, enthusiastically welcomed Hamada to the fold on Twitter, ever the grinning disciple for DC and its characters. Of course, how big a role he plays long-term depends on both Aquaman and Shazam, two films he did have an active part in seeing through from conception. Even if Johns is getting something of a raw deal, that's not really Hamada's fault, and Warner Brothers should get some credit for acknowledging there are real problems with their production process that are limiting their potential to compete with Marvel on even footing. It's also possible the studio has learned valuable lessons from both Wonder Woman's success and Justice League's failure. But there's no guarantee Hamada will be the answer. Some of his early career credits are not exactly masterpieces, although the same is true of Feige. And there's every possibility another box office misfire could see Warner Brothers panic and restructure their leadership again, or even abandon the DCEU altogether for another approach to their superhero films. The potential merger between Time Warner and AT&T could also render a lot of this moot if new leadership is installed. For now, though, Hamada has proved he knows how to do this, and it's not hard to imagine a scenario where he and Johns can get the DCEU back in the position it should be, as home to the world's greatest cinematic superheroes.